But we are going to continue this conversation because Kallie Kriel, he is the CEO of AfriForum, has joined us to talk further, particularly around the departure of 49 Afrikaners who are scheduled to land in the United States at any moment, really. Mr. Kriel, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's first try and tackle what is going on right now. The statements from President Trump addressing reporters a short while ago, and he says that there is a genocide in South Africa against Afrikaner people. What would you say to President Trump?
Yes, good evening to you, sir. You're welcome to just call me Kallie. Well, the fact is we don't use those terms, but there is a real problem. We have a situation in the country where the only category of crime that is called for publicly is, for instance, murders of farmers and Afrikaners with the Kill the Boer chant. We know that these people that have left the country have a legitimate concern that the South African Constitutional Court did not protect Afrikaners against this. We have the president not condemning these kind of chants. We see on farms that many of these murders are conducted in a way that people are tortured, a drill being used to drill a hole into a female's feet, blow torches, irons, and hot water. So those are the real issues. But unfortunately, the debate seems to go about, is it a genocide or not? The real issue is, let's recognize that this is a serious problem, and not like President Ramaphosa going around the world and saying there's no such thing as farm murders. So I think this is an issue that should be a nuanced debate. I think it's important that President Trump meets with President Ramaphosa. But of course, unlike what people are saying, the problem is not misinformation. There should be real change in South Africa, and that is the way to find a solution to the benefit of all of us in the country.
I'm going to come back on the question around farm murders as you put them, but I want to focus the attention once again on President Trump, who has used the term a genocide is going on in this country against Afrikaners. He even tells the reporters there that you people, as in journalists, do not want to report about it. Do you believe that President Trump is being misled because what he is saying is misinformation?
Well, I think from an American perspective, if they look from the outside and I see people are being killed here through the use of torture, and people, there's chants calling for people to be killed, and it's not condemned by the courts and it's not condemned by the president, that leads to these kind of statements. So the best way we can work against those kind of statements is to make sure that we are serious in tackling these issues locally, just as we should be serious about tackling other categories of crime, such as violence against women and children, such as gang violence, and a number of others. It won't help to try and go into a debate telling the President of the United States you are using the wrong terms. What we should rather say, let's recognize the real problem and solve it. Then those kind of statements would, of course, disappear.
Let's come back to your assertion that there are farm murders. The powers that be in South Africa, the government of the day, is clear that crime affects everyone. There is no special group of people that is reserved for gruesome kinds of crimes. As I speak to you tonight, there are murders that are taking place in Bizana, and a woman was killed in the most gruesome of ways. As I talk to you tonight, in KwaZulu-Natal, 3 suspected criminals were killed because they have made life for people in the area of Amawoti simply unlivable, if there is such a term. So Why should there be a special category for crimes that affect either Afrikaners or Afrikaners who are farmers?
Yes, this kind of argument that I hear from you now is exactly the problem, because the terrible other crimes that are committed are being used to try and downplay farm murders. The same government that says we have a crime problem would not say, when people like AfriForum call for action against violence against women and children, as Advocate Gerrie Nel does, they don't come and say, no, don't try and make crime against women and children a special category. There's a real crime problem in the country. They don't do that. And that is exactly the problem. We have a crime problem. That AfriForum has acknowledged. That's why we've got a private prosecution unit who supports the most people they support. 95% of Gerrie Nel's cases are to support Black people that are negatively affected by crime. But our frustration is really, as soon as we speak about the real issue of farm murders, then it is downplayed to say, no, but there's other crime. That is not the way to solve that. There is, of course, other crime. This government even makes rhino poaching a special category of crime. To say this is a priority crime, let's address it, let's have special units. They make gang violence a priority crime, and a number of others. So we're not asking for special treatment from government. We're asking them, here's a specific kind of problem that needs a specific approach. And now we met with downplaying to say, no, there's a big problem of crime everywhere. We're hearing the president saying in New York, there's no such thing as farm murders. We don't need, I think that is very disrespectful towards the people that are victims of farm murders, to try and downplay it. The lady that was killed that you spoke about today, that should be condemned in the strongest possible terms. That is why AfriForum also has safety structures that looks after everybody's interests in the area where they exist. But that terrible incident can't be used to try and diminish the reality and the tortures that is seen with regard to farm murders.
If you and I agree, Mr. Kriel, that crime affects everyone in South Africa and it is just as gruesome even against Black people who are in the majority in South Africa, do you believe it was justification enough for 49 Afrikaners to board a plane and go to America? Do you support that move?
Well, no, we've said that they have the right to take decisions for themselves, and we respect that, and we wish them all the best. But this is not the same, these kind of crimes. Although it's all terrible, farm murders is the only crime what is called for openly by somebody like Julius Malema. It's the only crime, if you go and look at social media, where farm murders are celebrated. So there are serious problems in that regard. But of course, it's not only farm murders. We've seen under the current ANC-led government,
Kallie Kriel?
It's called the Government of National Unity.
Kallie Kriel,
property
I'm
rights
sorry.
disrespected and a number of other issues disrespected.
I have to interrupt you, and it is purely on the basis that you are using the song, which a court has said it does not amount to hate speech. Now, you are inserting that song and saying it is used to celebrate what you say are farm murders. And I'm saying to you, that is wrong. And if I didn't challenge you on that, I would not be doing my job. So are you going to continue to repeat that?
Yes, most definitely so. And that is exactly the reason why some Afrikaners feel it necessary to leave the country, exactly because a court found it is fine if somebody sings or chants that Afrikaners should be killed. I have children, they hear these chants. It disrespects their dignity. It really installs fear amongst people. And we're not going to say, you know what, the Constitutional Court ignored the fact that the judge in the appeal court was totally biased against AfriForum previously, did not want to recuse herself. We cannot remain silent if a court says it's fine that people chant that we can be killed. So I'll continue to say that. And this kind of issue with the court not protecting the human rights of Afrikaners in this regard is exactly why people want to leave the country, and that we need to solve. The government can't change the court's decision, of course not. But what President Ramaphosa at least can do is to condemn farm murders in the strongest possible terms, to make sure, like other categories of crime, it becomes a priority crime. And of course, then also look at issues such as the new regulations with regard to race that brings in stringent quotas. Those kind of things need to be addressed. And we are willing to participate in discussions with the ANC and government, and we have already started to do so to see if we can find some kind of solution.
Yeah. Just on the song issue, very quickly, as we wrap our heads around that and quickly deal with it. The EFF is a political party, and yes, they've won this through a court process, which basically allows them to continue singing this song. But my understanding is that Afrikaner groupings have actually been having meetings with the ANC, and I think along with other parties. I don't know if you were part of that recent meeting. And I understand that at some point, Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General, this may not have been at that particular forum, but he said that he feels, as leader of the ANC, that that song has no place in South Africa anymore. Does that not count for anything? Would that be something that you are willing to tell the Trump administration, who clearly give you time and space to speak to them?
Well, that's not what Fikile Mbalula said. He said the ANC won't sing it because it's not appropriate now. But he said they won't say anything or try and stop anybody else from doing so. And that is exactly the problem. What we want is clarity and strong leadership from President Ramaphosa to say this song is totally wrong. And research have shown that the majority of South Africans would want the president to condemn it. And that is not something hard to be done. Also, the wording of Fikile Mbalula did not condemn the song. And that should be easy. If they refuse to do even something simple like that, I think people are losing confidence. And that is, of course, one of the reasons why we see people leaving the country. Afrikaners, let me be clear, cannot survive as a cultural community in the US or any other country. That is why I'm not leaving. We respect those that want to leave. But we have to make sure that for your children, for my children, we find a future here on the southern tip of Africa. And to do that, we must at least be able to condemn something that is extremely hurtful to Afrikaners, and that is when people chant, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer."
In that same vein, you are saying that the president of the country should condemn the continued singing of this song. In that same breath, Kallie Kriel, you know that this country's constitution, it's celebrated around the world, and it allows for what is called freedom of expression. It allows for freedom of movement, and that's why 49 Afrikaners have left, but you are not willing to be part of that grouping. What would you say to people who will ask of you to condemn this departure of 49 Afrikaners under the guise that they are politically persecuted in South Africa through laws that are racially biased, when we both know the history of this country and the transformation that has to happen? Just very quickly, my question to you is, where would you say black people who are also victims of a gruesome crime in South Africa, where should they go? If a group of 49 can go to America running away from very similar circumstances, where do blacks go?
Well, of course, they can take the hand of friendship we extend to all communities in this country to fight crime. And that is what we should do. As I've said, what makes the other crime different is that there's a public call for violence against Afrikaners. But I think it's time we join hands. That is why AfriForum has a number of agreements with rural communities, traditional leaders. That also includes safety programs that we work on. We should go nowhere. That is why I'm not going there. If there are black people that leave the country, and numerous have done so, especially professional people, we should respect their decision to do so. But those of us that decide we're going to stay here, we should make sure to say, how can we make this country a better place? How can we solve real issues? How can we prevent this country from going the Zimbabwean route? And for that, we need a strong civil society that is not afraid of speaking out when things are wrong, even though you might be accused, as what is happening to AfriForum now. What we are doing is an act of loyalty to the people of this country. We're going to fight with what we have against policies that not only affects middle-class people, also poor people, corruption and all those kind of things. And we have an obligation to the country to do so, and we will work with the majority of people in this country that want the same thing.
All right.
And that's a future for their children.
Kallie Kriel, thank you very much for your time. CEO of AfriForum joining us tonight.